Hello, 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 and welcome to the Sovereign Society podcast. I'm your guide, Sabrina Riccio, and this is something that is a tough conversation to share, and in my heart, I know it's an important conversation to share. So here I am sharing it. No matter who I talk to and who I've talked to lately, so many people out there are navigating through so much grief and death right now. And I have zero notes, zero outlines for this episode. All I know is that I wanted to share from my heart as someone who's been navigating through death since the age of 3. And I wanted to create this podcast episode because here I am in this recording navigating through 5 deaths in 2 months and losing my grandmother, losing my mom's best friend, losing another dear family friend from old age, losing one of my Burning Man friends, and then losing my mom's best friend's daughter, who was my sister. She was my childhood soulmate. And death is a part of life. And while all of us grieve differently, and I know there's a lot of heaviness too, because there's so much death going on with all these wars, like I talked about in a previous episode 2 weeks ago, talking about, how as we as sacred disruptors can, lead during times of conflict and war. There's death there too. There is this wave of death that is navigating and moving through the collective right now that personally I just feel like it hasn't felt in a long time. And of course there was a pandemic, and there's a lot of souls that are transitioning, a lot of troubled souls transitioning, a lot of tired souls transitioning, and a lot of souls of people who are here to guide us and support us. And this is the thing. Even though a person may not be here physically anymore, according to the teachings of Kundalini Yoga, and this was my favorite thing to learn when I got my Kundalini Yoga teacher training and got my certification as a Kundalini Yoga teacher, is that of the 10 bodies that we carry, what lives on is the soul and the subtle body. And so the subtle body is when a song is playing and it reminds you of someone, whether dead or alive, that's their subtle body present. So it's the subtlety of their soul and of their spirit present. When you see like a hummingbird, and it may remind you of your grandmother, that's your grandmother letting you know, like, I'm here for you. There's these powerful signs and symbolisms that can remind us of our loved ones that have crossed over to the other side. And I remember, like I've been navigating through death since the age of 3. My senior year of high school, I lost my best friend from suicide. And then 2 weeks later, my grandpa died. And here I am 15 years later, my grandmother dies. And then 3 weeks later, my childhood best friend, and both of them were named Sarah. So I'm seeing this bookmark, like these bookends, right, of very intense deaths of people very, very close to me right after the other. And they say death comes in 3s. So I'm like, fuck, it's coming in 5s for me. But this bookend, like something that I'm seeing from this is that I'm choosing, because I have that awareness and I've gone through my own spiritual journey then, and I've gone through so much death and grief, that it's important when we have death, and maybe you've had death before, or maybe you haven't had death before, but it's important to know to not repeat the patterns, right, that may have been when someone died before. So for instance, after my grandpa and my best friend Sarah died, I, graduated high school and went off to college, and I had a hard time speaking my truth. I gained a lot of weight. I hid behind weed. Like I was smoking so much to numb the pain. I wasn't taking care of myself by going to therapy. Even though I had a therapist at school, and I went a handful of times, I wasn't consistent with that. I wasn't taking care of my health and well-being. So now here I am, 15 years later, I've had a near-death experience of being struck by lightning and have embarked on my spiritual journey and cultivated a genuine relationship with God and myself and like people around me that actually see me and care for me and validate and respect, I should say. There's an equal reciprocity to that, and that took a lot of work. But now here I am, and I'm seeing this pattern again with death, and I'm choosing to not allow the disruptive patterns and habits to take over. There's things that I'm choosing to do to reclaim my power back from that, because again, as death is part of life, the bigger thing that you need to remember is that when we lose a loved one, the last thing they would want of you is to stop your life. That person who is no longer here, their soul is free. They're free from their sufferings. They're free from their traumas. They're free from their limiting beliefs, the doubts, the insecurities, all their pain. All of that is gone, right? When we are here in this 3D reality, even though we're working actively to the 5D unity consciousness, for us to get to that unity consciousness, we have to honor time and the present and the gift that time offers, because there's the present moment is the ultimate gift, because again, tomorrow is never promised and the past is done. And with the past being done and that person who is no longer here now being part of your past, it's important to understand that now that they are part of your past, what lessons of them being in your life can you take with you into this now moment and into the future, right? You have to understand that they're free. There's a reason why they came into your life and vice versa, but there's a reason why they came into your life and they're not leaving your life. The people that you had a very close connection to, they're not leaving your life, right? They're going to share with you in the most subtle ways that they're okay. The most important thing you need to understand, though, is that while they're subtly sharing with you that they're okay, they want you to be free. They want you to live the most of their life. And most importantly, the best way to honor them is to celebrate their life and to honor their life by the wisdoms, the lessons, and the joy that they brought into your life, right? And I'm sure if there was unfinished business with someone who's no longer here, it's important to forgive. Otherwise, that shame and that guilt that you're still harboring, because clearly that spirit and that soul isn't, but that shame and that guilt, that is all the ego edging God out, right? It's the shame and the guilt, the lower density and vibrations that aren't heart-centered, that if God is love and love is real, right? Those sayings that have been said forever. Can you love that person? Can you give them more grace? Can you reflect, if someone, for instance, is no longer here that was suffering, can you reflect and honor the fact that they were suffering and there's a lesson to be learned on maybe what not to do or not how to be. So I'll share a little bit about my experience recently, because I haven't really been on social media lately because, one, the online space just feels so extremely heavy right now. And navigating through all my health shit I've been going through. And then this on top of, I've had to be very discerning on where I bring my spaces. I like podcasting because I get to share my medicine and my wisdom, and I'm not absorbing so much of just that scroll, right? But being away and seeing what's going on, I'm doing my best to share the wisdom that I've learned along the way. And recently I was gone and I was been sick and my grandmother was transitioning. And when I had COVID, my grandmother died. And I got my Mother Mary tattoo on my forearm, if you've seen it on Instagram, on 12/12. And when my grandmother died, like my grandma, when I got struck by lightning, let me just say this. When I got struck by lightning, when the lightning came through, I had in the car with me a box that my grandmother gave me that had holy water from Lourdes, an amethyst wish tree with jade on it, a statue of Jesus holding Mary and Joseph's hand, and this plate that I had that had Mother Mary with it. Mother Mary has just always been like played a massive role. And so on Christmas Eve, when I showed my grandmother my Mother Mary tattoo, that was my last memory with her, my last visit with her. And then she transitioned 3 weeks later. And when she died, I had COVID. So that was like a really intense thing for me to purge and release at that time. And I was on like day 4 of having COVID. And when we were at her rosary, I was sitting below this Mother Mary statue, stained glass. And I knew right there that my grandmother was going to be guiding me through there. So now I have, this Mother Mary tattoo, and I know I've got my grandma on my arm and to help me to embrace me. And, it was hard because when she passed, there was a piece of me that felt like she was free. And then 6 days later, my cousin, my mom's best friend's daughter, who is like my sister, she was a year older than me, she died from a drug overdose. And it was the day before her birthday. It was the last day of her being 33. Her 34th birthday was the next day. And, it was extremely, extremely, extremely challenging for me. And then when I had the day of her funeral, was exactly 1 month since my grandmother passed, my grandmother's funeral. And it was on the Pisces new moon. And so there was just so much faith. Like I was just hearing faith, faith, faith. Like that was, and on my tattoo of Mother Mary, it says the mystery of faith. And I share this with you because this is an example of how the subtle body plays and how, the wisdom and the support from our loved ones on the other side really comes through because you're still here because you're here on mission. You're here to impact the world with your light and your truth. And now that the person that, is that you've loved or cared about, or maybe someone that you had troubles with, see them in a different light now because they're the way that people behave. A lot of people are fighting their demons right now and have been for a while. And that's why there's been such a spike in fentanyl overdose and a spike of drug overdose. And where a lot of, again, troubled souls are leaving this place right now. But I know the day after I had Sarah's funeral and I spoke at it and I talked about, that this is all an illusion, this life, and we're here for just a short amount of time. So we need to make the most of this time. And while I'm not saying like this is how you need to grieve, everyone grieves differently. The truth is that you have the ability to shift your perspective. That's a miracle right there, is a shift of perspective, right? You have the ability to shift your perspective, and instead of wallowing or feeling victimized that someone you loved or care about or someone has passed away, you have the ability to make that choice to be victorious. So change your habits. Embrace the great characteristics of a loved one who's no longer here. Honor the wisdom and the lessons you've learned from maybe someone who hurt you in the past who's no longer here. Practice that forgiveness. Choose to be better and do better because that person was in your life, whether it was a positive impact and you saw like what a light they were in the world, or if it was someone that was really hard. How can you have learned from that lesson how not to be, right? And so, the day after Sarah's funeral, I knew that was one of the hardest days of my life because all of my childhood, the last big one of my childhood wound finally came up that I've been working and busting my ass to heal and alchemize. And it was a lot about abandonment and feeling abandoned by family members. And that was a really tough challenge for me. It's what had me gain so much excess weight and to hide and to silence myself because I felt like the bastard niece and really unworthy to be heard. And the next day after the funeral, I found out that my friend who is part of my Burning Man camp died, and we don't know necessarily if it was an overdose. That's what I'm feeling because so many toxicology reports are also behind. But I got word that, my friend Kyle passed. And, I had a family member reach out, and to break those patterns, I spoke my truth and said how I felt. And I think it's important for us to understand that tomorrow's never promised. And right now, we need to speak up and share from our heart how we really feel. And if there's judgment from someone because you're speaking from your heart in the spaces where maybe you need what you need, maybe you need more love from that person. What are those deep rooted needs that you need from someone? You know what I mean? And to really recognize and see within yourself, and having the courage to vulnerably share the humanness of you, of where you need support. I think there's something really powerful from that, where you can be unapologetic, and the truth will set you free. It will help break shackles. It will help you be in your sovereign embodiment. Because here's the thing. The throat, the third eye, which is your intuition, and the crown, which is the connection to your divine truth and the divine. If you have your throat chakra blocked, where you don't or can't speak your truth because of an insecurity, of fear of judgment, fear in general, doubt, afraid, there's things that have hindered you from speaking your truth. If you can't speak your truth, not only will you be able to feel that divine connection to your heart, because that channel coming down through the crown, through the third eye, through the throat, down to the heart can't come in. There's an energetic block there, or there can be fragmentation. So it's not in this sense of purity. But right now is about finding purity within our voice and within our truth, speaking that out. And here you have, I'm a podcast host. I'm a Gemini, Virgo, I'm ruled by the planet Mercury. And it was hard for me for a long time to speak my truth and to really share from that space. And, that was the pattern that I had after the death in the past. And so it's important to speak your truth. If you need help, you need to speak that into existence. I need help. You need to reach out and someone and ask for help. There's no shame of you asking for help. And that's been the challenge, is that we've grown in a society, especially with social media, of perfection and having to look good and showcase what only looks good so that it looks like our life is perfect so we can sell. It's all bullshit. Something that I've learned over the years is that, and something I'm passionate about, it's important to also share your vulnerable human side, because right now we need to have this connection, a genuine connection of you being seen, because we're all perfectly imperfect, right? And there's a deeper understanding to accept that we're going to make mistakes. There'll be times where, we could have done better. But when we also have communication with people who may have been unaware, because everyone's doing their best based on their level of awareness, and everyone's doing their best based on their perceptions, until you have the courage to speak your truth, and then you have a genuine, real conversation, and you get out of your own way to hear that other person too, that's how you can grow. And that's how the other person can grow too. And this is how we can do better. This is how we can come together in community with full, genuine connection. And this is what the world is craving right now. I don't know about you, but I'm so tired of bullshit and fakeness. And it's another piece of why I've been away from social media. But it's the biggest thing has been to take care of my health and well-being, my mental health. So for me to even have the courage to speak up and to share like, yo, I've needed to take care of my mental health and do it with compassion for myself and do it vulnerably and genuinely and authentically. Who knows, maybe me sharing that can help someone else down the line. And these are the things that we need to do to also grieve our past. It doesn't even have to be because of death. There can be mistakes of our past that, we need to transmute and to let go and to heal from. This is a healing journey. We came here on this planet to heal. We came here on this planet to grow. And the way we grow is by embracing when we've made mistakes and to take radical responsibility for that. I talk about this a lot more in the upcoming weeks. I had a conversation with Ashley Pollard, and we talked a lot about that. And what I've learned from death is that how can I do better and how can I live out like the incredible characteristics or the way that the person that I love that's no longer here, like what did they teach me and how can I actually walk that talk and practice, that embodiment of the lessons and the wisdom and the strength that came from it. And so while there's a lot of grief and death right now, my prayer is that you do what you need to do and that you don't get caught up in the dwelling of the victim mentality because that person is gone. It's not going to do you anything and it's not going to bring them back. Plain and simple, I'm just going to say it. But what I really want you to understand, and I remember like 2 weeks after my grandmother's sister died, who I was very close with my aunt, I sat in an ayahuasca ceremony, and the medicine had me go into the women's restroom where there was a bed and a place I just needed to separate from the group and be in my own space. And the medicine told me that you've had so much death in your life that now is the time for you to go through that grieving process. And for 2 hours straight, I just bawled my eyes out and I felt, my beloved holding me, and I felt Bud at my feet, and neither of them were there. And so I think that's what's really helped me shift this perspective deeper, because this is the first groups of death or any death that I've really had since that ayahuasca ceremony as well. And like I said, time is so precious. We're bending time. We're jumping timelines right now that you cannot allow the past to dictate your inner peace in this now moment. So if you feel like there's a loved one that has transitioned, that there's something that you needed to say, I invite you to write that letter to them and read it out loud. I invite you to speak your truth. If there's a loved one who's no longer here and you're missing them, play a song that reminds you of them and just close your eyes and meditate and feel their presence with you because they're there with you. If you need to take a time out and nourish and fill your cup, please do that. My prayer is that you just do it responsibly in a way that is supportive and actually healing, and not going to a pattern of you drinking or you taking drugs or things that are doing it because you're trying to separate or disconnect. I sat and did ayahuasca, but that's a plant medicine. And it was an opportunity for me to reconnect, and that was my intention. So my prayer is that you be able to not be so stuck in that death, and that, of course, grieve and ask for help if you need it. But it's also important to move forward. It's all because that's what the person that is no longer here, that's what they would want you to do. They would want you to move forward and to make the most of their life, because now they're free. Their soul is not tied down anymore. Their soul is liberated. They're with God, spirit, universe, creator, whatever lexicon you want to use. I'm going to say God, They're with their loved ones, and they're there for you when you need it. So, like I said, there's been a lot of death, there's been a lot of grieving, and there's been a lot of challenges collectively. But again, the arrow has to be pulled back before it can be shot forward. And my prayer for you is that you use this time to nourish you and to do what would make that loved one that's no longer here happy and really proud of you. That's my biggest prayer. So I wanted to come on in this episode and just to bring courage and a little beacon of hope and some light that you've got this. Your loved one that's no longer here, they're rooting for you more than ever. If there was someone that you had like a disagreement with or had challenges with, they're asking for your forgiveness. And now that they aren't here, it's up to you to practice that forgiveness, because you're going to be the only one suffering. They're not. Plain and simple. So this is about you reclaiming your sovereignty from the past, making the most of it, embracing the medicine of the mistakes, the pains or the trials that they went through. Like what from that can you not do? But all I know is that when I had those difficult conversations the day after Sarah died, I called my aunt and I said, I just want to let you know that Sarah really moved me to break free from those patterns that I would have done that would have been self-destructive by not speaking my truth. And she helped me have the courage. And that's the thing our loved ones can do, especially the ones that were passionate and so just sharing from that love. They want nothing, again, and I just keep saying this, they want nothing but the best for you. So if you're going through grief, if you're going through sadness, if you're going through death, I encourage you to reach out to a loved one and to ask for the support that you need, and to also make the most of it, because you're alive. You are alive. You're here. There's a reason why you're here. You're here to unleash your medicine, the wisdom and the amazing memories and the joy and the lessons you've learned up until now. Make the most of it. Help other people. Like, my prayer is that you are here to activate a legacy that, and that's the thing is, like, when you die, like, what do you want to be remembered for? And how can you share that now within your business, within your personal interactions, whatever? Like, how can you bring love and kindness and warmth into the world? And if you need that, ask for that help, because the lone wolf days are over. You don't have to navigate through this alone. So I love you. I'm praying for this planet. I'm praying for this community. I'd love to hear how, in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening on iTunes, to leave a rating and review, like how you're taking care of yourself. And you can also leave it on Instagram at Sovereign Society Podcast. Again, my prayer is that you are free from the limitations and the doubts and the pain of the past, because it's not going to be conducive to your well-being, and it's not going to support your mission here. Of course, you can gather the nutrients, like I've said before, and I was saying with my aunt, and this is something I've been really running with, is that the trash of the past, like, you have the ability to see it and make that into compost, and to recycle that, and to embrace the nutrients, and to plant new seeds, and to nourish your garden, and see that, the past, if there have been mistakes or challenges, like, what nuggets of wisdom can you have as that compost, to really nourish your garden, to plant those seeds so that you can bloom unlike ever before. And here we are, it's springtime, right? Especially here in the Northern Hemisphere. But if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with autumn and fall here, it's like it's time for you to shed and release what isn't serving anymore. So anywho, I love you. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your support as I've been navigating through this journey. And I'm really looking forward to see what comes from all of this. But we've got this together. We came here during this wild time for a purpose and a reason. The loved one that's no longer in your life was in your life for that purpose and for that time and for a reason. Please just make the most of it by embracing it and honoring it and loving, and finding the gratitude for the connection and from that, let's make the most of it together. I love you, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Salam.